seen the illustration before. I've done it here, where you get a huge glass jar and you put it right here, and you get all these, you get some small rocks, you get some big rocks, and you get some sand. You've seen it, right? And you say, I want you to fit everything here in that. And it can only work if you do it in a certain order. You put the big stuff in first. If you wait, you're in a lot of trouble. Because you can put the sand in, then you can put the gravel in, then you put the big rocks and it won't fit. But if you allow the other things like the sand to work itself around the large things as it goes in, all of it can fit together. And if you don't do it in the correct way, what you must do first is you have to begin to remove things from that glass jar as soon as you start to put them in. And some of us, probably all of us, need to begin removing some of those things from our lives right now in order to get better, to get healthier. I remember when I was training for a race, I was like, why am I not getting any faster and sometimes slower? And I recognized it was my diet. You can't train for a marathon very well if you eat a pack of Oreos every week. I needed, and I don't really eat an entire pack, but I love Oreos. And I needed to remove some of the things in my life first before I could grow and become better. You know what I'm saying? We all are in the same situation. What are the things, so that you can have a heart like God's, what are the things in your life that you need to begin removing? So that you can grow, so that you can mature. What are the things that you need to start taking out of your life? It's a hard thing to do, by the way. It was actually yesterday, I was looking at this magazine. I don't know if any of you get it, Reader's Digest. Anybody? No? Okay, I'm the only one. My mom sent it to me, so way to go. Thank you. I like it because it's got some pretty funny comics and stuff in here. I know you can't see this, that's not the point, but follow along with me anyway. It's defining the word slapstick, and it's got a guy standing on a ladder which is on a branch with two vultures, and he's cutting off that branch. The problem is his ladder is on that branch. And a lot of times we're not willing to John 15, you know what I'm talking about, cut off the branches that are dead. We're not willing to John 15 because we're leaning on the very branches keeping us from growing. And we're scared to death. You're following me on this. And we need to be willing to start removing those obstacles from our lives. What it comes down to, and this is very simple for me. We live in a society and a culture that we pretty much say, look at me. You know, you do something for somebody else, and the first thing you do is you want to tell somebody what you did for them. Maybe you know those people. Maybe you're one of those people. You do something for your wife. It's your wife, and you want to make sure all your friends know what you did for your wife. We live in the culture of look at me. And we consider everything that we do for God, everything we do. Some of you may be sitting here today and you look at your attendance of worshiping God. You have come to worship God and you look at this as being a sacrifice. Well, I'm not on the golf course. I'm sacrificing a golf game. No, you're not. We look at everything that we do for God. We write a check. God's commandment. 10% is the basis for giving back to God because everything that you have is His to begin with, and you write a check for $125, and you think, I'm sacrificing. When you're making $175,000 a year or more, or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying. Often the actions that we have for God we always consider them to be a sacrifice. But first and foremost, let me tell you right now, what will let you examine your heart is not necessarily sacrifice, because I think we have so inaccurately defined sacrifice, but look at flat-out obedience. We need to look at our obedience to God more than we look at our sacrifice to God. Why? Because we have misaccurately determined what it means to sacrifice, or inaccurately. 1 Samuel 15 is a text dealing with the confrontation between the prophet Samuel and the current king Saul. Saul was the king just before David, and we know, and you're going to learn about this, that King Saul absolutely hated David, even though David ended up marrying one of his daughters, even though David was best friends with his son Jonathan. We're going to learn all about that. But here's the prophet Samuel, who God was using to communicate to Saul. And he's talking with him and he's speaking with them. And this is Saul in 1 Samuel 15, 20 through 24. I just want to read it for you. And this is Saul speaking, and he goes, But I did obey the Lord. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag, their king. Their soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. Now, I need to go ahead and stop right there. Here's Saul. He did what God commanded, but he viewed his allegiance to God as simply taking the best of the calves that were there, the best of the animals that were there, and offering them as a sacrifice. For him, that meant he was doing what God requested. But here's the response of the prophet Samuel. He says, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice. And to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin. I love it. He's referring to that. Sacrifice over obedience. He's looking at that as rebellion. He's looking at an arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. And then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. I violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the men, and so I gave in to them. His fear, an unhealthy fear, dictated his actions. And he put sacrifice over obedience. You look at your heart condition, and one of the things that you need to look at is, are you obeying God? And it will give you a clear answer. I think that our obedience is often the most clear sign that our heart is pursuing God. It tells us that because of Saul's disobedience, that Samuel was actually crying out to the Lord in response to Saul's disobedience. Why? Because Saul was a king that was giving no honor to God. He was sacrificing, but because he wasn't obeying, his heart wasn't right. He was giving no honor to God. He was self-centered and he was arrogant. Yes, you can sacrifice, you can give to God and still be self-centered and arrogant. You see, obedience is seeking God with all your heart. Obedience is finding ways to let the Word of God dwell in you richly. Obedience is saying yes to what God asks. Obedience is following the promptings of God's Spirit. Obedience springs from a healthy fear of God. How many of you have ever given the response to an instruction that you gave? Maybe your teacher, Beth, you know, she's a preschool teacher, and she looks at these guys and she says to them, I need you to do such and such. Have you ever heard the response, why? We all have, right? I mean, you can be at work and you can tell someone who you're superior to, according to the chart in the office, right? And you say, I need you to do such and such, and they go, why? And maybe you have children, okay? And you tell them, I need you to do such and such, and the first thing they say is, well, why? And what is your response? Say it again, Danny Gallo. Because I told you to. Now, my children have never said that to me, of course. They're perfect. I need to take out the garbage. Why? Because it's full? Why? Yeah, right? Because I said so. And you know what? I've been examining, and I try not to use that as a response because I don't think that's always a healthy response. But one of the things I've learned is that sometimes it is an okay response. Because sometimes there's nothing you can do to help the other person understand what really is the reason behind something needing to take place. Sometimes there's confidentiality issues, and I can't share with someone, hey, why I need you exactly to do this. But yet, even as adults, we always want an answer. We want to know for ourselves, why do I need to do such and such? And we say, because I said so to a child, and we think that should be enough. But you know what? I think when God tells us to do something, we shouldn't question why. We should simply go, okay, because He said so. Here's a parent speaking, I'm trying to help you here. And maybe I'm not doing the best job possible. But we always look at a sinner. I'm a sinner, yet I am a parent. So a sinner is speaking to a sinner, a child, and we're saying because I said so, and that should be good enough, right? That's what we want. But yet the authority of all of creation, the creator of all things, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords says to do something, and in your heart you're saying, why? Because He said so. Shouldn't that be enough? If your heart is right with God? Because here's the perfect creator, and you, a sinner, are asking Him, explain yourself. Justify your rules to me. Follow me, right?
Yes.
That's heart condition. That's heart condition. I mean, it brings us to the third question, and we know the answer already. What keeps us from having a heart like God's? What's the answer? Sin. I wasn't here, but I know that who you support and Bob and Gigetti, they led a Bible study Wednesday night right here, and it was on 1 Peter chapter 4. I know because I did the prep for them. I just couldn't make it. And, I was busy working with family and helping my family out. It was a good evening to have with them, but I know that deals with sin. Sin keeps us from having a heart like His. And sadly, today, in today's culture, in today's world, sin isn't really even an acceptable word. I remember somebody came to my office and they said, I'm really struggling with some things, can you help me out? I said, I'd love to try. I can certainly pray for you, and that's a great thing to do. And I said, well, after they spoke to me, I said, well, this is a lot of sin you need to address. And they just looked at me, can you not call it that? I said, but that's what it is. If you don't even want to call it what it is, you're never going to really be able to deal with it and cope with it. Never saw him again. Never saw him again. Today in our culture, isn't that acceptable to even say it? We don't want to hear anybody talk about sin. Certainly not a politician. I think rarely a preacher will even mention sin, sadly. You know that our society has gone awry when sin has become an unacceptable cause for the troubles of humanity. With all the talk that we have about values, yet no talk about sin. The definition of values is hopelessly vague. So we spoke about this a few months ago. You cannot separate morality from Jesus Christ. Otherwise, there's no parameter. There's no rules. Everybody just defines it however they want to define it. J.I. Packer, who's a theologian from Europe, he says, Christians often imagine themselves to be strong, healthy, and holy. But the way to health, here's the way to health, is to recognize that we are weak and sick and sinful. The point is not to let the society that you live in to give you the standard. I mean, if you're only a little better than the society that you live in, that doesn't make you very good because they don't have any definition of sin. We need to remember that sin is a violation of the will of God.